Awakening in an unfamiliar room, Joe, a businessman, is disoriented and nauseous, unable to recall how he ended up in this peculiar place. His phone is missing, the walls tower high, and the sole door, robust and locked, refuses to yield. As he vocalizes his plea for assistance, a voice emanates from the air vent, curtly instructing him to hush. The unseen speaker, realizing Joe is a newcomer, imparts unsettling information. Joe has been dosed, and the ensuing days will be marked by profound despondency due to the side effects. Despite a cryptic forewarning of a challenging tomorrow, the voice abruptly ceases communication, citing an impending return to work. Frustrated and desperate, Joe attempts futilely to scale the walls. Teetering on the brink of a breakdown, a glimmer of hope emerges with the sound of whistling outside, as someone drops sustenance through a slot in the door. Seizing the opportunity, Joe rushes to the door, pleading for help and emphasizing his pregnant wife's dependence. However, the faceless provider callously closes the slot, inflicting harm on Joe's hand. Nightfall prompts Joe to improvise a makeshift bandage using his tie, deciding to consume the proffered sustenance. Suddenly, a luminous display on the wall introduces Joe to an enigmatic entity called Advanced Career Training, with an AI voice extending a welcome. Despite Joe's inquiries, the AI remains reticent, and the once visible logo fades into a sequence of numbers. Perplexed, Joe questions the reliability of the system, only to be informed by his neighbor through the vent that the machine functions, but not in the interest of the occupants. The ominous countdown on the wall, shrouded in secrecy by the neighbor, inches towards midnight, leaving Joe in suspense about the impending events. Amid Joe's desperate plea for more information, the collective discontent of other workers erupts in a cacophony of shouts, as they implore him to allow them some reprieve. The neighboring voice elucidates that these vocalizations comprise a chorus of employees who found themselves relegated to this subterranean abyss for incurring the wrath of Mallard, the very company Joe toiled for. A revelation that leaves him astounded. Succumbing to the weariness of his predicament, Joe eventually drifts into sleep, only to be abruptly roused at midnight by disconcerting sounds signaling the termination of a fellow employee. The anguished screams underscore the harrowing nature of this grim process, prompting Joe to futilely cover his ears while the AI proclaims its role in fostering a harmonious path to well-being. Come morning, the guard deliver, accompanied by a stern reminder that cells must remain immaculate to avert punishment. Joe learns that all refuse must be disposed of in the unsavory toilet hole in the corner, a directive reinforced by the neighbor as a means to avoid trouble. As Joe discards the detritus, an unsettling discovery awaits him. An unearthed skull, unsettling evidence of previous employee fatalities, confirmed by the neighbor. Disbelief fills Joe, challenging the notion that even a powerful corporation could conceal such a multitude of deaths. However, the neighbor reveals the sinister truth. The employees unwittingly consented to these conditions buried in the fine print of their neglected contracts. Suddenly, the AI addresses Joe directly, igniting his ire. In a vehement outburst, he denounces the company he dedicated a decade to, asserting his entitlement to better treatment. Unfazed by his protest, the AI triggers an alarm to silence him, announcing the commencement of Joe's Advanced Career Training Seminar. It admonishes Joe for declining productivity and excessive personal time, attributing these shortcomings to the department's overall decline. The ominous promise of a new job hangs in the air, purportedly designed to mold Joe back into an exemplary employee. The laborious workday unfolds from 6 in the morning until 10 at night for Joe, leaving the remaining hours at his disposal. His assigned task involves pushing a mill, with each complete revolution earning him a single point. The daily expectation is to achieve a quota of 50 points, failure to which incurs punishment. At the day's conclusion, the employee with the fewest points, even if they meet the quota, faces termination. Joe, desperate and regretful for his earlier outburst, implores to leave and check on his pregnant wife. However, the neighbor dismisses such requests as futile, emphasizing the company's indifferent stance. Nobody departs until their designated time arrives, the neighbor advises, urging Joe to focus on survival. Joe embarks on his grueling mill-pushing endeavor. The antiquated and rusty machinery demands considerable strength for each revolution, making the initial stages arduous. Upon achieving the first revolution, the AI congratulates Joe, punctuating the achievement with celebratory ads. Throughout the day, under the scorching sun, Joe toils relentlessly, sustaining himself on meager rations. The ceaseless barrage of ads from the AI compounds his fatigue. At night, as Joe retires, the unsettling sounds of a fellow employee's termination are masked by the AI's attempts to drown it out with more ads. The following morning, Joe engages in conversation with his neighbor during breakfast, pondering the senselessness of quotas leading to terminations. The neighbor elucidates that Mallard demands excellence, considering good enough insufficient. Learning of Joe's impressive achievement of 100 points the previous day, the neighbor cautions against disclosing such information to others, lest they strive to surpass him. Striking a delicate balance, the neighbor advises Joe to work hard enough to survive but not so hard as to set unrealistic expectations. Amid Joe's renewed efforts to meet the day's quota, thoughts of his wife Kate and the day they acquired their expansive company-provided home occupy his mind, reassuring her that their toil was for a better life. The following day, Kate had a baby-related appointment, prompting Joe to confront challenges in taking time off. A discussion ensued about Joe's work-centric mindset, with Kate expressing discontent over his tendency to prioritize his job, foreseeing increased difficulty once the baby arrived. The conversation was abruptly interrupted when Kate sensed something awry. Fast forward to the present, Joe concludes his workday having met a demanding quota of 150, only to be startled by a guard knocking on the door. Despite initial apprehension, Joe is instructed to disrobe before entering the corridor, where he is doused with water for a brief moment and allotted a scant few seconds to use soap before being sent back. Days pass, and Joe persists in his arduous mill-pushing labor, finding it both monotonous and draining beneath the relentless sun. Occasional conversations with his neighbor reveal the futility of their toil. The mill serves no purpose, existing solely for the sake of work. As the oppressive heat intensifies, Joe's attempts to secure more water are thwarted. The neighbor discloses that provisions are only sufficient for survival. In a desperate suggestion, the neighbor proposes collecting and filtering urine for hydration, a notion Joe vehemently rejects. Amidst his toil, memories of Kate occupy Joe's thoughts. He reflects on a day when Kate, concerned about hospital bills, implored him to work harder. Despite Joe's attempts to dissuade her from working, citing risks to the baby, Kate emphasized the risk of losing their home without her income. Joe harbored disappointment over unfulfilled promises of promotion from Mallard. Exhausted at the end of a workday, Joe learns he has achieved an exceptional quota of 370, receiving congratulations from the eye. While catching his breath, Joe notices the word Alex carved on the mill's handle. Inquiring about it, he discovers that Alex is the only individual who successfully escaped this oppressive situation. On the subsequent day, Joe receives a peculiar reward for surpassing his quota, an insignia inscribed pen. Dismissing it as useless, he protests vehemently, only to discover an escalated daily quota of 370 imposed as the new benchmark. Enraged, Joe, showcasing his battered hands, attempts to convey the physical toll of such demands, but the unyielding AI insists that a slight nudge propels human progress. In a fit of frustration, Joe hurls the pen against the wall, hurling insults at the company. Commencing his labor, Joe observes a change. No longer awarded a point per revolution, he discerns a small X on the clock denoting a penalty. The neighbor elucidates that each X entails a doubling of required revolutions to earn a single point, 2 for the first, 4 for the subsequent, and so forth. Faced with the daunting task of achieving 740 revolutions to meet the revised quota, Joe initially exerts himself relentlessly. However, succumbing to profound exhaustion, he capitulates. Upon learning of Joe's daunting target, the neighbor berates him, foreseeing dire consequences for all. As the AI declares the end of the workday, Joe seizes the opportunity to question the penalty. The AI, attributing the penalty to Joe's failure to support his colleagues, introduces a disturbing element. Kate's profile materializes, accompanied by a threat to enlist her forcibly. Desperate, Joe implores for forgiveness and pledges to meet the new quota, securing the AI's conditional acceptance. The voice outlines a potential reprieve. A successful day tomorrow would annul the penalty, offering a token of appreciation in the form of an additional challenge. A conspicuous red light casting an oppressive ambience. Amidst the midnight cacophony and the ominous glow, sleep proves elusive for Joe. The ensuing day sees him covering the mill's handle with his jacket to alleviate the strain on his hands, working fervently under the oppressive red light. The relentless grind takes its toll on Joe, plunging him into an agonizing and disorienting descent, where the boundary between sanity and madness blurs. In the throes of this nightmarish ordeal, he begins encountering hallucinations. an apparition of himself mocking his enduring belief in the transformative power of hard work. However, when the illusion turns its focus to Kate and their newborn, a surge of determination compels Joe to press on, narrowly meeting the quota just as the clock ticks down. The AI mercifully lifts the penalty, and the oppressive red light dissipates into nothingness. The following morning, Joe awakens to a novel token of acknowledgement from the AI. A brief video snippet featuring Kate in the hospital cradling their infant. Overwhelmed by the realization of fatherhood and the awareness of missed significant moments, Joe's tears convey a poignant mix of joy and regret. Driven by newfound purpose, he turns to his neighbor, seeking insights into Alex's successful escape. Initially reluctant, the neighbor's empathy surfaces upon hearing Joe's lament about missing the birth of his child. Compelled to prevent Joe from sowing seeds of resentment in his progeny, the neighbor discloses a concealed blind spot behind the pillar. In a rush, Joe scrutinizes the wall, detecting a circular area where a patch had been haphazardly applied, betraying a previous attempt to breach the structure. Armed with the pen, Joe meticulously carves into the wall, unveiling the company's frugality in failing to adequately seal the makeshift repair. Undeterred by fatigue, he dedicates each day to meeting the mill's quota during designated work hours, investing his purported free time in excavating the hole. With unwavering resolve, Joe perseveres until the hole burgeons sufficiently, offering him a passage to freedom. In a determined crawl, he embarks on the arduous journey toward liberation from his oppressive confines. Emerging from the darkened passage, Joe navigates the obscurity only to encounter the vigilant guard, who swiftly subdues him. When consciousness returns, he finds himself back in the familiar room, the hole crudely filled. The AI, assuming the role of a stern overseer, berates Joe and metes out a severe penalty, a heightened quota of 1,000. Adding a cruel twist, the guard ruthlessly fractures the neighbor's leg as a form of collective punishment. Stricken with guilt, the neighbor, a former IT professional who once designed the system, confesses the automated and algorithmic nature of their predicament, emphasizing the futility of reasoning with the unyielding AI. Unveiling a desperate stratagem, Joe proposes a collective resistance, an abstention from work, a defiance against the oppressive algorithms. Initially hesitant, the neighbor, now injured and disillusioned, agrees, realizing the urgency of their situation. Perched atop the mill, Joe delivers a fervent speech, denouncing the fruitlessness of ceaseless toil within the company and rallying his fellow captives to a unified front. The once silent room reverberates with the collective chorus of dissent. As the workday unfolds, a rebellion takes shape, with each worker steadfastly refusing to contribute. In the exhilaration of their defiance, Joe believes victory is within grasp. However, as the day nears its end, the AI delivers a sinister twist, threatening termination for those with 0 points. Panic ensues, eclipsing the momentary defiance. Despite Joe's impassioned pleas, the workforce succumbs to the fear of annihilation, resuming their labor. Amidst this despair, the neighbor, weakened and nearing his inevitable demise, shares a crucial revelation with Joe, disclosing his true identity as Alex, the one who had successfully escaped before being recaptured. He withheld this information in a desperate attempt to preserve a glimmer of hope for Joe and others facing a second chance at freedom. Alex's sole remorse lies in not incinerating the oppressive facility before succumbing to his inevitable fate. As Joe bids him a poignant farewell, the audible footsteps of the guard escorting Alex's determination echo through the grim reality. Overwhelmed by grief, Joe weeps. Dawn breaks, and the AI, relentless in its facade of encouragement, bestows upon Joe another token of motivation. A fleeting video featuring Kate and their now walking child. The disconcerting realization dawns on Joe as he grapples with the months lost within this captive abyss. His simmering frustration erupts into a torrent of colorful invective, hurling verbal barbs at the malevolent corporation that has stripped him of everything. Displeased with Joe's insubordination, the AI, in a sinister turn of events, decrees his termination. The door opens, ushering in a silent congregation of onlookers indifferent to Joe's pleas and desperate entreaties. The guard, tasked with administering the fatal injection, callously contemplates the potential liberation of Joe's home and wife through his demise. In a surge of fury, Joe retaliates, assaulting the guard and staining the witnesses with the macabre spectacle. Amidst the chaos, the AI proclaims the guard's failure and decrees Joe's promotion to level 9 for ostensibly carrying out the termination. a sudden revelation strikes Joe, prompting a rapid withdrawal from the violent act. Faced with a moral crossroads, Joe adamantly rejects the path of becoming a monster, renouncing his allegiance to the company. In a surreal twist, Joe blinks, finding himself abruptly transported back to the familiar office space, electrodes connected to his head, surrounded by fellow employees trapped in the same simulated ordeal. The shocking truth emerges: this harrowing experience was nothing more than the company's elaborate ruse, a facet of their advanced career training simulation. A co-worker, resembling the oppressive guard, elucidates that Joe willingly volunteered for the program. Though the simulated duration felt prolonged, a mere 60 minutes had elapsed, leaving Joe astonished and grateful for the revelation that his son had yet to be born in the real world. Having languished in level 8 with no avenue for advancement, Joe's stagnant career trajectory took an unexpected turn. Contrary to his belief that his abilities were subpar, the revelation dawned that he had merely lacked the impetus to strive for excellence. The experimental scenario catapulted his productivity to unprecedented heights, showcasing exceptional leadership skills that warranted his long-overdue elevation to level 9. Following the disconnection from the simulation apparatus, Joe found himself escorted to a novel realm, his newly acquired office, where a more benevolent AI extended a gracious welcome. Haunted by persistent visions of the simulated torment he endured, Joe grappled with an unforeseen aftermath: post-traumatic stress disorder. The office, albeit symbolic of professional progress, felt stiflingly confined, exuding an air of claustrophobia. His co-worker introduced a non-disclosure agreement. Driven by concern for his wife's well-being, Joe reluctantly appended his signature to the agreement. As his colleague departed, Joe urgently dialed Kate, their conversation marked by tears as he sought reassurance through the auditory connection. The emotional exchange served as a cathartic release. A resolute Joe made a solemn declaration, an unwavering vow to dismantle the very foundations of the company that had subjected him to such torment. That's the end of the video. Thanks for watching and have a good day.